What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Deeper Dive presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Loughran, along with you. I don't know how I just pronounced your name, Dave. Laufey, that was a rough Loughran.
Not bad.
Dave Loughran. Got a little Scottish.
I thought it was all right. I didn't notice any problems with it. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Most people don't use my full name anyway, so
that's
we're
fair.
good.
Laufey_D, Loughy_D. Haven't said that in a few weeks. Should be saying it again soon. Podcast, hopefully, we'll be back in your live soon. But Dave, we have a Major League Baseball slate to talk about tonight. Adam is off. I am staying in his place today. I have a bit more to say than he typically does at the top. How's your world right now? What's going on?
It's going well. Yes, Sherm, we are alive. Yeah, going well. Honestly, dude, I feel like I'm really invested right now in what Josh Engelman has going. I can't stop paying attention to these weather reports. I'm just hoping that Florence doesn't have the type of impact that's anticipated, because all day, all I'm seeing is catastrophic rains up to 40 inches. It's going to stall out over the coast. Like, this is some crazy shit, man. I got to tell you. And I mean, obviously, he'll be safe. You know, everyone down there that's evacuating should be safe. But hurricane season's no joke. Last year we saw Harvey, and was it Irma that wiped out Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
And now we've got 3 hurricanes lined up, just ready to batter wherever they feel fit in the Atlantic. So been a good day for me. Just hoping everyone stays safe out there. I showed you that radar image.
Yes, you did.
Like from space, where you can see Florence, and oh my God, like it's incredible that this is even possible, but it is, and it's happening, and supposed to make landfall by like Friday morning.
Yeah, they originally was talking Thursday night, pushed it back to Friday. It's just insane. So to anybody who is in the path of the storm, we wish you the best luck. Obviously, as Laufey said, those who have evacuated hopefully will be safe further inland. I was looking at the maps. I said to you over I am about the rivers. Like, you think of the coast, but the storm surge and the water is just going to push water so much further inland than you would even think. It's going to be, if it lands the way they say there's going. Hey, we talk meteorology on here sometimes, and we may poke some fun at some of those who do it professionally here in DFS. They're wrong sometimes, and this is one of the times we're hoping they're wrong.
They're wrong. They were wrong with the one in Tampa Bay, Florida last year.
Absolutely right.
I find it funny though. I see like random YouTubers giving out like evacuation warnings on their channel. It's like, listen, pal, people tune in to, certain YouTubers for specific things, but like, I come to you for sports takes, and you're warning me to evacuate and that it's very dangerous. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone has a good idea of what's going on when their neighbors have boards on their windows. Like, I doubt they're doing anyone a service by really alerting them of the problem.
Listen here, DFS stud 111. You don't need to tell me what the hell's going on. But we do have a MLB slate to get to. It's like when DFS players try to break sports news, where they're just retweeting someone else, but they don't give them credit. But anyway,
right.
I digress. We do have to talk about a Major League Baseball slate here. We start with Oakland and Baltimore. It's Andrew Kashner and Liam Hendriks. Liam Hendriks, I believe, is an opener in this one. We'll keep an eye on that. I'll double check the notes, but an implied total of 5.7 for Oakland, 4 runs for the Baltimore Orioles and Andrew Kashner. Kashner is not a good pitcher, Laufey. So this would seem like a good spot for Oakland bats. That's the extent of my analysis here. How does this game break down for you?
By the way, I accidentally yesterday called Wade Miley Made Wiley on the live stream. So
that's how it works.
Unlike those random DFS players that don't give people credit, there's your credit, pal. No, Andrew Kashner is not good, and something that stuck out earlier. I did the morning strategy show with Jay Carey today, and pointed out that Kashner earlier in the season was racking up a lot of strikeouts against lefties, but that's no longer the case. His swinging strike rate is the lowest in the league of every qualified pitcher. Bartolo Colon is no longer considered qualified, by the way. It's the lowest in the league. He has the lowest K rate against right-handed hitters in the league. His strikeout rate against lefties has fallen from 25 2 months ago to 17%. This is not a good pitcher. there's really nothing redeeming about Andrew Cashner here outside of the fact that, he's not allowing a ton of stolen bases, and that's it. I mean, he's allowing a 350 plus WOBA to lefties and righties. Lefties are hitting home runs at him above a 1.5 per 9 clip, 1.63 to be exact. There's nothing here. So, I definitely like this Oakland team. Fortunately, they're on the East Coast, so we get an early lineup. Ramon Laureano leading off. He has mashed left-handed pitching or right-handed pitching this season. Been absolutely phenomenal. You look at Laureano's numbers. This is a guy who's providing speed and power. He has a 60% hard contact rate against righties, which is pretty beautiful, and a 396 WOBA and 311 ISO against righties. Now he's been leading off for a little while now. 80%, approaching 90% humidity at Camden Yards. There are a lot of good plays in this lineup, starting with Laureano to Chapman to Chris Davis, Jed Lowry into the mix. Really solid stack, this Athletics team. There's no denying that. And right now they have one of the highest expected run totals on the slate at 5.6, second highest on the day.
Whatever way you break down this Oakland offense, they've just been mashing all year, to be honest. You look at the past 30 days, you look at the season long against righties, against lefties. This is a team that's poised to make the playoffs and has a run even at the home field advantage, with the Yankees scuffling here at the end of the year. Over the past 30 days, this lineup, active roster, has a 343 WOBA, a 207 ISO, a 120 WRC plus. Like, all these numbers are just on the up and up. 21.1% K percentage is, good for what, 15th or 20th in Major League Baseball of the last.
How about the season too, though? They have the third highest WOBA. Their active roster has the third highest WOBA versus righties on the year. Their 193 ISO is fourth. I try and point this out as much as possible because people get obsessed with the platoon advantage.
Yep.
It was one of our subs in Slack mentioned it the other day. FK Coolers, I think. Or FC Coolers, FK Coolers. I don't remember. We know who he is.
FK Coolers. FK.
Yeah, pointed out that people get too hung up on platoon splits, and I agree. In a case like this, I absolutely agree, because Laureano hitting righties better, Chris Davis hitting righties better, Chapman, Piscotty. These guys are all hitting same-handed pitchers better than they are lefties this year. Maybe not every one of them. Probably not Marcus Semien, and not Mark Kenha, who's not in the lineup. But yeah, it's just, all in all, this is a team that hits righties really well. Just because they don't have a lefty-heavy lineup should not keep you from targeting them. Very, very good spot. And as I pointed out already, very humid at Camden Yards. We've seen what that does in the Northeast when it's humid. Balls fly out of these hitter-friendly parks.
Absolutely. Anything redeeming on the Baltimore side? I believe I'm correct, right, with Hendricks being an opener here, so we should see somebody else out of the pen not too soon after.
I think, I'm not positive, but I think we could see Bassett. He hasn't pitched since the 7th.
The Hound. That's what
the
I'm
Hound. There you go. I like it. He hasn't pitched since the 7th. So that would make some sense. We've had Liam Hendricks opening game. Kevin Cash is a trailblazer, baby. Look at this. All these teams doing it. Minnesota, Oakland, obviously Tampa. So, no, I'm not really high on anyone here. They're a bad team that you're going to get at a discount, but I'm not really sure it's entirely necessary, because there's a decent amount of cheap pitching that I like here. And quite frankly, I just don't like loading up on teams facing a team that's deploying the bullpen strategy, because we may have some idea of what's going to happen, but we really don't have the facts.
All right, let's move on, and obviously we'll circle back towards the end, get Dave's top plays at each position and some of his favorite stacks. Hard to stay away from Oakland here, but we will do our best to endeavor some more analysis as we go through. Next one up is Washington and Philadelphia, where we have two of the better pitchers on this slate with Steven Strasburg and Aaron Nola. Nola plus 10K, Strasburg just below. Implied run totals below 4 for both of these here. A close money line. So what should be a well-pitched matchup will probably end 11-9 in favor of the Philadelphia Phillies, Dave. But what are you doing with the pitching here on this slate? Are these two guys you're targeting, or do you see it as a day you're paying up at bats and just trying to fit in some of the cheaper arms?
I mean, I like Nola I never have any problem rostering Nola. He's an elite pitcher, but he's just been amazing this year. And importantly, he's been better at home from a strikeout standpoint, particularly. He's striking out well over a batter per inning at home this year. And really all of Philadelphia's starting pitchers have better strikeout splits at Citizens Bank Park. He's striking out 10.5 batters per 9 at home, 8.2 on the road, 30% K rate at home, 23.5 on the road. So big difference there for sure. And that's exactly what you're looking for when you're paying this much. Another thing I love about Nola, outside of the fact that in 4 starts against Washington, he's been superb, but more importantly, you look at his last 2 starts, there's some home run regression here. Up until his last 2 starts, he had allowed only 8 home runs on the season. So while I don't expect him to allow another 2 or 3 home runs today, I really like knowing that he can allow 2 home runs and still have 27 fantasy points. He can allow 4 runs and 3 home runs, not get out of the 6th inning, get the loss, and still give you 23 fantasy points. Right now, Nola has a very high floor, and we've seen that in each of his last 7 of his last 8 starts where he's finished with 22 plus fantasy points. Granted, 22 fantasy points isn't what you want, but at the same time, he's very much proven that he can give you 35. He can give you big numbers. The strikeouts are flowing at home, and it's a Washington team that is potent. They are dangerous, but he has definitely tamed them this year across 4 starts, so we have a decent sample with a similar lineup each time. Yeah, I don't mind Nola. Now, on the other side, this is where it gets tricky because Strasburg is cheap. Well, compared to what we've seen his price at in the past. He's $9,500 on DraftKings and on FanDuel. The Phillies are just in an absolute spiral. They held a 6-3 lead. They needed to get that win to stay somewhat in the race, and they lose. They cough up 3 runs. The tying run on a walk with the bases loaded. Juan Soto homers in the top of the 10th. They lose. That's what they do. So Washington has the lowest expected run total at 3.3. Aaron Nola is the only player on this roster right now that can get them a win when they need it. So that's, you have to like him. But I do think Strasburg is in play. The concern is Strasburg, his velocity is down. There's no doubt. Like right now, since coming back from the DL, he's sitting on a 93 mile per hour fastball, which is the lowest average velocity of his career.
Wow.
Of his career. You just look at it. 93, all 4 starts. Prior to that, it was up around 96, 97. The lowest was high 95. So that is concerning to me. But at the same time, the swinging strikes have been there. He's still getting outs. So I'm not interested in playing Philly outside of Rhys Hoskins in tournaments because he crushes fastballs and changeups, and Strasburg throws like 75% fastball changeups against righties. But I think Strasburg is in play. For me, it really all depends on how popular he's going to be. Right now, I'm refreshing the ownership projections on Awesemo.com, and we're looking at around 28% on DraftKings, the highest owned pitcher. If that is going to be the case, Dan, and we'll obviously update again around 6:30, you should do the same too if you're watching. Don't take it look at it now and then look at it when it's updated, because it can be a big difference, as we've seen. 28%, 30%. I don't mind fading Strasburg here, but there's no doubt that he can have a big game. I just think there are some concerns mixed in, and when a guy that relies on a mid to high 90s fastball doesn't have that right now, you don't have the same luxury as you do when you don't have your best stuff, if that makes sense.
Surprised to see Bohr out of the lineup tonight. Is there anything going on there with Philly? Just him getting a night off? Yeah,
Gabe Kapler's an idiot.
And listen,
he's an idiot. He's just a flat out buffoon. I mean, look, I'm not putting his personal character into question, but his managing decisions as a baseball manager are egregiously bad. The other day, Justin Bohr is the only one that does anything. It doubles and then he walks. And then in like the 5th inning, Kepler puts in a pinch runner. Carlos Santana promptly grounds into a double play. Like, sure, things have worked against his gambles, but when you have a guy that it looks good, that has power, and you need to put some runs on the board, don't pinch run him for J.P. Crawford. Like, the guy he continuously makes just stupid decisions. And he's just being by the numbers, and being a sabermetrics guy and an analytics guy is awesome. And that's where the league is going, but not when you're so blinded by actual statistics that you can't see the forest from the trees. You can't see how baseball actually works. And I don't think he can right now.
It's I'm not, you know this, I'm not a BVP guy, but you look over on something like Baseball Savant with Bohr against Strasburg, and you look at the X stats from their encounters, and you see an xWOB of 510, an X slugging of 766, exit velocity plus 90 miles per hour. Seems like a good spot for Bohr, especially with decreased velocity for Strasburg. Seems like Bohr would mash on a slate like this, but we don't have him in the lineup, so we'll have to save that for a different set of analysis.
And by the way, last thing, I understand too that before I'm sure a comment will be made. I understand that that Justin Bohr and Carlos Santana, it's tough to cohabitate because you have to put Santana at third base.
Right.
But how difficult is that really to do when Maikel Franco isn't in the lineup anyway? Right? Like, does J.P. Crawford need to be in the lineup? Well, to me, it feels like Santana and Bohr at first and third is better than putting Asdrubal Cabrera at third and J.P. Crawford at short. Just saying.
All right, there's a quick question here in chat. Is O's A's game stack reasonable? I don't see myself using much of the Baltimore side, but I guess if you see it blowing past the implied total, it's more than in play, right?
Yeah, so there's one reason I don't think it's crazy. If you're paying up for pitching, like if you wanted to get some pricey Oakland bats, but also, get a decent pitcher in there, because, outside of Jonathan VR, all of these guys are pretty cheap. Like, you're getting Mancini at 39, Chris Davis at 34, VR's at 46, but then it really thins out. Beckham at 35, Adam Jones and Mullins are low 4. These guys are really cheap. So they are a price play. Liam Hendricks, and I don't think Chris Bassett's particularly good. It's not crazy, but I'm not sure it's a strategy that I'm going to employ that much today. I'm not sure it's necessary. And plus, game stacks in baseball are a lot different than football, where, if a team goes up by 14 points, your strategy immediately changes and you begin to throw the ball more and force it downfield and risk, bigger plays. In baseball, nothing changes.
Yep. No,
so the correlation isn't really there.
That makes a ton of sense to me. As I said, I have not considered any Baltimore bats as of yet. Michael Ellis said, what is implied? Implied total. So Vegas lines give us the game total and implied totals for both teams. So when you're looking at an implied total, it's the implied amount of runs they're expect to score on any given game.
Sorry, I was watching some on the Hurricane.
I've never known you to do that, Dave. It was, what is an implied total? What's implied?
Yeah. Team total, expected run total, same thing.
Exactly right. So we'll continue on here. Take questions both from the YouTube chat, the organized chat, and Slack chat as well. If you guys are looking to ask questions as we go through, again, we'll get Dave's top plays towards the end. It's an interesting pitching slate because you have you have Strasburg and Severino below 10K. Both have struggled for different reasons. You mentioned Strasburg's velocity. We'll get to Severino in a little bit and his struggles over the past, few weeks. Honestly, I know he's had solid outings, but he hasn't been the dominant pitcher we've seen, save one outing really over the past couple of months. He has really petered off a bit for the New York Yankees. But let's go next to Toronto and Boston, where we have Aaron Sanchez down there, 4,600 against the Boston Red Sox, and David Price going for Boston. He's up to $9,700, on this slate. He's had a very good run. He's really shown himself to be the pitcher they thought they were getting. He hasn't been necessarily all that flashy, but has been limiting walks, has shown some double-digit strikeout upside, and gets a matchup here with the Toronto Blue Jays lineup that we know does strike out a bit. Is Price in your plans tonight, Dave?
I know Jake likes him, and I think justifiably so. I don't know how much price I plan on targeting though. So the edge you get with rostering Price is quite simple, or at least it should have been. I thought you would get a lot lower ownership, but I'm seeing Price pretty much right around within 4 or 5% of Severino right now. And I don't know how I feel about that. So two things. One, if you're playing on DraftKings, you get the win points. A lot of win equity here. 5.7 run total for Boston. 3.4 expected run total for Toronto. That's the second lowest on the slate. Let's take a look at the lineup here. It is, pretty much what we've seen, par for the course, typical Blue Jays lineup. You have 2 lefties and a bunch of righties. Interestingly, though, David Price has definitely had more upside from a strikeout standpoint against right-handed hitters this year. So I think there's upside here for sure. His swinging strike rate is 10.8 against righties, 10.7 against lefties. But his ex-WOBA and expected ISO or expected WOBA is lower. Or let me rephrase. His WOBA and ISO are lower against righties than they are against lefties, and pretty much identical expected WOBA and ISO. Now, I don't think Price is a crazy play at all. I think he does come with a somewhat limited ceiling. We saw the 33, 34 fantasy point games from him, and one of them, by the way, came against Cleveland. But I think I have enough respect for this Toronto team to where I think he probably falls in between like a 25, 28. The Blue Jays recently, though, you mentioned some 30-day stats for Oakland. Sometimes it's worth looking at. And the Blue Jays last 30 days have not been bad. They have not been great. They've pretty much just done what they've done all year. And that's, right around the top 10, top 12. Like, it's still a decent baseball team. So I'm kind of torn on David Price. I think that, again, win equity is there. I'm predicting like 6 one-run innings and 6 or 7 strikeouts, which isn't bad, but I'm not going to force him into my lineups either.
That makes sense. I'm not a huge fan of David Price just because I'm a Yankee fan, but more so because in this instance, price point seems a little high for me. I do think Toronto has a very weak lineup here. So you can see the upside, as you said, the win equity, 3.4 run implied total makes it worthwhile. What about the bats here? Obviously, Boston is very expensive. Aaron Sanchez at one point in his career was supposed to be one of those up-and-coming starters, but he was never a big high-end strikeout guy. He was just somebody who knew how to pitch, has seemed to lose that over the past year or two with injuries. Is this another night where a Boston stack could win it all with pretty much ease and at least should have some exposure in your lineups?
Yeah, I think they could definitely win it today. They always can, of course. It's the Boston Red Sox. They are the most potent offense in the league. When you have a lineup of Betts, Benintendi, Martinez, Bogarts, Moreland, and the top 5, each and every night you have a chance to just blow the top off of it. Aaron Sanchez has a negative K- BB rate against lefties.
Yep.
Negative. I mean, that's unthinkable for a guy that, has made 18 starts on the year. He's poised to make 22 starts. He had some injuries here and there because he always does. But you finished the season with a negative K- BB rate. We've got some problems. Literally walking 15.6% of lefties. He has an xFIP north of 6. Not good. I mean, really not good. He limits power to righties, but it's kind of not even important here because I just think he's gonna put a lot of guys on base. It's Boston. You can absolutely play them. Now, that said, I don't think I'm forcing Boston into my lineups. And the only reason is if you're doing so, you're basically limited everywhere else. Betts, Benintendi, and Martinez on DraftKings are all above 5,500. Bogarts is above 5,000. These guys are really, really expensive. One interesting approach could be a bottom of the order stack because of how bad. Now, hear me out here. I know everyone loves playing bets and the top guys, the really expensive ones that take up 25% of your salary for each. But I'm kind of curious to see what a bottom of the order stack would look like, because you have Moreland, Devers, Holt, Sandy Leone, who stinks, of course, and Bradley. The bottom 5 of this lineup are all left-handed. And if you wanted, you could wrap it around for to get a Benintendi in there. I'm not saying avoid all of the righties. What I am saying is all of the righties not named Benintendi are by far the most expensive hitters on this team, whereas Moreland's 4,100, Devers is 3,900, Brock Holt's 3,800. They are cheap. They're very cheap. I don't think it's crazy. And also, look, they're going to have opportunity with runners on base to knock in runs. You're going to have those guys atop the lineup. So if they do well, hopefully not too well, but well enough to get aboard and to keep and to move the lineup forward, you're likely seeing 4, maybe more than 4 at bats for everyone at the bottom of this lineup.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of at least 5 through 7 here. And then you made the point, Sandy Leone, not necessarily a great play, but if you can get to Jackie Bradley Jr., you do have the exposure to this Boston team total, and you have maybe some savings against what you have at the top and some savings on ownership as well. So that's one of the first places I looked as we were cruising through here. Seth also wants people to know Benintendi may be cheap on other sites as well. So good to see you, Seth, by the way. Let's continue.
Like what?
Yahoo and FanDuel.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Yeah, Bennett, 37 on FanDuel?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Betts is 48. Martinez is 1847. So yeah, that's a nice discount there. Thanks, Seth.
There he is. Sign that man up. And Gordo says Yahoo isn't a real site. So there you go. Let's any reason to take a Blue Jay bat here against Price? Anybody that you think as a one-off could be worthwhile? If Price is the highest owned pitcher on the slate, is there, the people love to talk leverage. Is there leverage in a Morales or a Gurriel play here in this lineup?
I don't really think it's necessary, honestly. I mean, the problem is I could tell you there's leverage everywhere, right?
Right.
Like, Detroit scored 4 or 5 runs against Garrett Cole in that bullpen today. You say there's leverage everywhere, but if we go through every game and we tell you that every team is viable, we're not really doing you much good. We're just telling you that everybody is viable, and that doesn't really help. So we got to take a stand somewhere. And no, I don't really have a ton of interest in these bats against David Price, who has looked very good lately and has done a good job recently of limiting power to right-handed hitters. And there's a lot of righties in this lineup.
I believe we have 5 more games to go, so we'll pick up the pace a little bit here. Make sure we get through everything, get Dave's top plays before handing it over to the live Up to Lock show with, I believe, Spags and Jake tonight. But I'll confirm that before we go. Milwaukee, Chicago next. Kyle Hendricks, Manny Laura's favorite pitcher, and Chase Anderson on the mound for the Milwaukee Brewers. This game being played in Wrigley Field. I have not seen any wind, right? No wind in this one. Cubs have a 4.8 implied run total, 3.8 for the Milwaukee Brewers. Chase Anderson's one of those pitchers, Lofty, who is sort of a league average, maybe just above league average, and can cause some problems. Jake says Spags and I are correct. So you get Jake and Spags leaning up to lock. So a good matchup here for the Cubs, but not a great one. Hendricks, again, a decent pitcher, but this is an offense from the Milwaukee side that has some upside. Is this a game you're ignoring? How does this one break down for you?
I have nothing really here.
Yeah.
Outside of Chris Bryant, because Chase Anderson on the season, first of all, Chase Anderson's thrown a decent amount of innings. He's made 28 starts. He's at 150 innings. He's allowing more than 2 home runs per 9 to right-handed hitters. So it's been a clear issue for him. Now, a lot of those home runs to righties have come at home.
Yep.
At home this season, Anderson's allowing 2.57 home runs per 9 to righties. But even away on the road, or even away against righties, or even away, almost 1.5 per 9. So a lot of home runs to right-handed hitters this season. K rate is low. Swinging strike rate against them is low. You're talking power. Brian has power. Bryant is too cheap. There's no two ways around that. Bryant is too cheap, particularly on DraftKings. I think Bryant is one of those guys that you have to target. If you're talking cash games, he just makes too much sense. And outside of that, I'm not that interested. Like Javi Baez, for the same reasons as Bryant, he's got an immense amount of power, but he's also priced up from Bryant a little bit, although I think he's fairly priced. Those are the two guys in this game. Oh, and Wilson Contreras, because the catcher position is just so damn ugly as it is each and every day. So I'd say Bryant, Baez, and Contreras. If you're looking for a 4-player stack, I'd probably just throw Almora in there or Rizzo, because Rizzo's just a good hitter. But yeah, those three are my preferred plays from this game. On the other side, not really interested in Brewer bats.
The Chris Bryant call I like a lot. 4,400 on DK, and we already talked about Chapman against Cashner. You made mention of Devers against Sanchez, and then you have Arenado at home against a lefty. It's a good lefty, but still at home against a lefty at $5K, so sort of a discounted price at Coors Field. Bryant's probably going to go overlooked. I think his ownership, I can check ownership over there on Osmo.com, but has to be sub 10% on a slate like this. So that's an intriguing play here. I think cash makes sense. I think tournament upside too is there for the power of a potential 2-home run sort of night for Chris Bryant. So let's continue on here. We'll go to New York and Minnesota next. As a Yankee fan and as a fantasy owner, season-long fantasy owner, there's been no more frustrating pitcher on this squad than Luis Severino. Just hasn't seemed to have it all together over the past, I want to say 2 months. And that's anecdotal because you're going to find some good starts over the past couple of weeks. But the distance hasn't been there. He's walking more than you'd prefer, as he has in the past. The strikeout totals have been, 8 to 10, and they've been fine. And then he had the big clunker last time out against the Oakland A's in Oakland. This is a Minnesota team that obviously doesn't have a lot to play for. You have Odorizzi on the other side of it. I feel like Severino's where you sort of make and break this slate. If you choose incorrectly and roster or don't roster, he could really break some lineups here. Is Severino broken? Do you think he's found his mojo again, or is this a game that you'd rather just not touch?
So here's what I just responded to SJM, who asked a question: Severino or Price in cash? And I said Price because Severino is broken, or he isn't. Who knows? I certainly don't, and neither do you. We don't know right now. There's no glaring weakness that shows that Severino right now does not have it together. It's really, really tough. He's allowing a 3.52 WOBA and a 5.75 ERA since the start of August, right? It's really tough to analyze because different numbers will point you in different directions, right? Like, obviously, of course, to make it more difficult, he has an xFIP of 302 and a BABIP of 375. Both of those suggest that he's getting unlucky. But his line drive rate is way higher, and that's not good. So you really have to pick and choose which stats you want to look into. Just reading off from Adam's write-up on Severino today, you can see, again, pulling you several different directions in terms of analysis. I just think that there are too many question marks right now for me to have faith in him in cash games. In tournaments, I guess, but we have him projected at 25%. Like, I'm not sure you've noticed this, but no matter how bad Severino is, he's always high. He's always popular. And to be fair, 3 of his last 4 starts have not been bad. They haven't been stellar, but they haven't been bad. And then you have Minnesota team that, their lineup is it's not imposing. You have Forsythe and Grossman and Jake Cave and Mitch Garver, who is fine, but just not a deep lineup, not a scary lineup. So yeah, I like Severino today, but the honest to God truth is we really don't know what we're going to get from him. And sometimes we just have to admit that if you're going to pull the trigger on Luis Severino, you kind of just have to say, I'm betting on his raw talent, on a guy that we know has flashed, elite Cy Young winning upside, not in the past, not just in the past, but, in the very recent past, Dan. So got beat up against Oakland, but then was fine against Detroit, Baltimore, Toronto, White Sox. Yeah, I'm gonna say that this is another decent start from Severino, but really my guess is as good as yours. At his price, though, he's cheap enough to where you say, can Severino have a ceiling game at 9,400 and kill you if you fade him? Yeah, the honest answer is yes, he can at this price. It could hurt if Severino goes out and drops 35 fantasy points at that price tag and you don't have him. But I do think there are some viable pivots, and we'll get to them. David Price is one of them, but there's also another one. And I guess Strasburg too, but I think Severino has a higher ceiling in this spot than Strasburg.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's the tournament play. You go for the upside and you hold your breath that you're going to get the Severino that we've seen to start the year and we saw last year rather than the one we saw in July and early August. Yankee bats, are they on tap for you here just to fill in some lineups as one-offs? Do you see a stack in order for the Bronx Bombers?
I mean, obviously you can target the Yankee bats against Odorizzi, but I have interest in Odorizzi if you really want to leave the reservation and do things differently. He's one of these guys where, you can come running to me if he sucks and tell me I'm an idiot. That's fine. But going into it, be very aware that this is Jake Odorizzi and this is purely a leverage play, but a leverage play that could pay off, a leverage play that does make sense for a couple of reasons. The first of those reasons being that Jake Odorizzi, who has always been known as a reverse splits pitcher, is definitely pitching differently this year, and it has a lot to do with increased slider usage. We noticed that probably 2 months into the season that it became significant, and now it's been the case. He throws it 35% of the time to righties, and the K rate that he has against righties is really just case in point, right? More slider, more strikeouts. He's getting plenty of swings and misses on the pitch on that pitch. And right now we have him around 7% ownership. Very similar to Gibson the other day. Wasn't great, but wasn't terrible. To guys like Ronaldo Lopez and all of those Miami pitchers that went out there and dropped 20, 25 fantasy points against the Yankees when everyone stacked Yankees. It's simply a leverage play, but one that if it pays off, not just knocks out a lot of guys that have Yankee bats, but no one's really playing Odorizzi either. And yes, he has been good enough this season for me to look at him and say, all right, 5,500, 5 to 8% ownership, 13% swinging strike rate against righties this season. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 righties in this lineup. I don't think it's a crazy notion at all.
No, I was looking at his numbers, and it's his increase in K percentages coupled with an increase a bit in walk percentage as well this year. But it's there. The numbers are there to make this a possible upside spot for Odorizzi. I don't know if I'm going there, but I respect that it could be a spot to really make or break some tournament lineups for sure. Let's
also
continue.
Real quick though, guys like Sanchez and Stanton, their biggest struggles come against breaking pitches. Stanton mashes fastballs, so does Sanchez. But, if you can get him, if you have like a nasty 12-6 curve that you're not hanging over the zone or a hard sweeping slider, like those pitches are going to get them. And Odorizzi does have that now. So it's not crazy to think that he could post good numbers. And unlike Boston, the Yankees are one of those teams that will go out there and have 12 strikeout games as a team. Not saying all of them go to Odorizzi, but as a team, 11, 12 strikeouts on the day. I think Odorizzi does have the upside here to at least pay it off. And even if he went 5 one-run innings with 5 strikeouts and got the win or didn't get the win, at 5,500, you're getting all of the bats you need. He's worth the risk in tournaments, in my opinion.
All right. Obviously, any of the Yankee bats have the power upside on the other side. Like that goes without saying. So if you want to play any of them, you're not going to get an argument against Odorizzi. But Dave making the salient point there on the leverage potential for Jake Odorizzi for the Minnesota Twins. Let's move on.
Trying to tell you things that everyone else isn't telling you about, because obviously, we all know that the Yankees have probably been talked about till everyone's blue in the face. So,
And what everyone else tells you is to not read the comments. I'm reading the comments in YouTube chat, and it's a lot of fun, Dave. Let's continue on here and talk next about the Chicago White Sox and Kansas City Royals. Eric Skoglund on the mound against Carlos Rodon. This is the guy, Rodon, that we've been talking about, I feel like, for 3 or 4 years now. A very highly touted rookie and prospect, has shown flashes of being that upside guy this season. Over the past couple of weeks, seems to be slowing down. Last 4 starts or so, not getting to 20-point territory on DraftKings. You're seeing his walks increase a bit of late, which may show a little bit of a dead arm period. But he's been pretty solid this year, and we've targeted the Kansas City Royals a bit over the season due to the trades they've made and the guys they let walk in the offseason. Does Rodon make for a better play than a Severino at a cheaper price of $800 because of the matchup here?
He doesn't have the ceiling, but he figures to be pretty safe here. So the Royals are terrible against lefties. Like they really have no pop at all against lefties outside of Whit Merrifield and once in a while Salvador Perez. There's not much here. You look at their metrics. They're bottom 5 in weighted on base average, this active roster. In isolated slugging, it's 29th in the league. But interestingly enough, they also have the 5th highest strikeout rate against left-handed pitchers. Now, one common problem with Rodon is that he's really bad at holding runners. And fortunately, Omar Narvaez is like the lesser of 3 evils, with Wellington Castillo or Kevin Smith behind the plate being worse.
Yep.
But it's still a good base stealing matchup, which is why I think Whit Merrifield is a good play. Mondesi is a good play. But it is a good spot for Rodon. He's better than a lot of the surface numbers would indicate. That the only thing with Rodon is that even though I like him, I'm talking about just as a pitcher, even though I like Carlos Rodon, he is not a particularly high ceiling pitcher. And that's the only issue here. And he's going to face not 8 righties in the lineup. I like him here. I think, if you're playing cash, Rodon's pretty safe, but I'm just a little leery I'm a little skeptical that Rodon gets you what you need in tournaments here. Like, I would just pay up for Severino or these 9K guys who I know have more strikeout upside than Rodon does. Because for Rodon to get you 30, he's got to go 7+ innings. Like, it's almost certain that he has to go 7+.
It's the walks. The walks are really what's like on a whip site. He's walking way too many guys.
Right. And it all not only just the whip, but it limits his innings.
Yep.
Earlier in the year when he was racking up these monster games, it's like 1 or 2 walks, and that made it. Or he wasn't allowing any hits, and he was walking 4 guys. Right. So the base runners were still limited, but now you're seeing the walks increase dramatically, and I just think he's probably safe, but I don't love his price point. I think Rodon's more of like a high 7K pitcher, and that's the only concern I have here. But I like the stolen base upside on the other side. I'm not stacking, but I don't mind some one-offs here if you like the speed guys in a Merrifield or a Mondesi. Yeah,
Mondesi's been great. I'm glad to see the Royals called him up. He was one of those top prospects and has shown the sort of the speed narrative that can get lost a lot of times in lineup construction when everyone's chasing home runs. But get him on base, give him a couple of stolen bases and maybe a double, and he's giving you 11 to 14, DraftKings points, which now his price has risen obviously to 4.5, but his ownership typically is pretty down because he's not a power bat. Any bats from the White Sox side? Obviously, I guess Jose Abreu is back from testicular torsion, which bless his soul. He is batting
third. That was what Manu Ginobili had too, I think.
Yep, it is. It absolutely is. It's also what
one to forget.
What I'm not going to say the guy's name. There's a guy in my high school who suffered from it, and everyone knew about it, and he had to go for surgery. But I'll keep his name.
That's unfortunate.
Anybody here? Is it a Abreu Garcia one-offs, just power bats that can go up against Skoglund here in Kansas City?
Yeah, I wish Davidson was in the lineup, but I don't mind this team as a stack. I really don't. I mean, Skoglund's not good. The thing though is that he was on a 60-day DL.
Yep.
His last time out, he was the 7th last week. He threw 27 pitches. And then in his rehab appearances, his last 2 were like 57 and 55. So I don't think you see Skoglund go very deep into this game. Fortunately, Kansas City's bullpen is not strong either. So you're probably going to get good at bats there as well. No, I like this White Sox team. I mean, Skoglund should scare nobody. He's had homer problems, power issues versus right-handed bats, and you have a lot of them in the lineup today. But yeah, if you were to pick them out, Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson, if you needed somebody that had a slight power, not a lot, but at the top of the lineup, could see 5 plate appearances here. It's not the lineup I was hoping for, though, is the problem, right? Because you're not getting Wellington Castillo.
Right.
Evisel Garcia has to still be hurt. You have no Matt Davidson. So it's definitely less enticing a lineup than I would have liked. And that does have you limited to guys like Abreu and Anderson.
All right, let's close it out 2 games. We'll get your top plays, and we'll hand it over to the Live Up to Lock show with Jake and Spags. We have a game that's been talked a lot about in Slack chat. Haven't seen much chatter here in the YouTube chat or elsewhere on the social media platforms we stream to, but a matchup in Coors Field, John Gray and Patrick Corbin. Gray down to 6,900 here against Arizona, and Patrick Corbin at 10-2. Remember, not too long ago, John Gray and this entire Colorado Rockies staff were driving them towards the playoffs. Well, John Gray's dropped off a bit over the past couple of weeks. Has not been quite the same pitcher. I don't know if you've targeted or found any reason why. I know you said you talked a bit about him on the show this morning. What's this game for you? Are there bats here? Is it pitchers to go against the grain? What do you like out in Coors Field?
Yeah, right now, John Gray just inexplicably stopped being able to miss bats, and it's crazy. He has a 5% swinging strike rate over his last 3 games. 5. He has a 23% outside swing rate. His outside contact rate is ballooned to 73%. It's really concerning. He's given up 5 home runs with 6 strikeouts over his last 3 games and 6 walks. I am still a believer in John Gray because his raw stuff is just really, really good. But I can't have any faith in him right now. There's just no way I can place faith in John Gray with the way that he's been pitching lately. And it's that simple. Like, willing to take stands on certain guys and say, okay, they should turn it around. But, you go up against the Padres team and you strike one of them out, something is wrong. And not just that one start, obviously, not trying to use one game as a sample, but really the last 3 starts, he just doesn't have it. And it's strange. I'm not necessarily sure what to make of it.
Well, he has seen a drop in velocity on the fastball. I mean, it's not significant, but it's a full mile per hour.
I was looking. I didn't see that.
If
I see it at 94 over, not sitting high 94 over his last 8 starts.
Well, yeah. So I'm saying from when he was dominant in May and June and July, he was up at 95, 96 in May, June,
but
and July.
That's the thing. He wasn't dominant. He got demoted in early July.
Oh, that's right.
And then they brought him back up. And he had like 5, 6, 7 really good starts. And then he fell back off. But John Gray he was so bad and they didn't know why.
That's right. They demoted him in June, right? Yep.
They just demoted him. Yeah. So
that's right.
I don't even think it's the velocity. It's pretty inexplicable. There's a couple things like he's not getting any double play balls. With runners on base, he has struggled more so than he has in any other season. But outside of that, like, You're talking about a guy that on the season has an xFIP of 3.39, which is almost a run and a half lower than his ERA. You're talking about a guy that has a top 15 xFIP, a top 15 swinging strike rate on the year. Like, it's pretty inexplicable. But on the other side, I think Corbin actually merits attention here.
Yep.
You're talking about a pitcher that has pretty much the perfect arsenal for Coors Field. Now, obviously, you never like using a lefty against Trevor Story and against Nolan Arenado and hell, even Ian Desmond and a bunch of these power righties. But Patrick Corbin has been just dominant against right-handers this year. And there's a very good reason for that. 0.57 home runs per nine, a 31% strikeout rate. When you look at what pitches he's throwing against righties, everything comes in a lot clearer. So Patrick Corbin against righties is throwing the slider 37% of the time. That's very good for Coors. He's throwing the sinker 34%. You might not love that because you're not getting a lot of strikeouts on that specific pitch, but keeping the ball on the ground in Coors is essential to having success. Plus, he has a 56% whiff per swing rate on the slider, so you're going to get plenty of swinging strikes and strikeouts there. If there was a pitcher that could escape Coors unscathed, very similar to what we've seen the right-handed Herman Marquez do lately, just throw a lot of sliders and fastballs at Coors. Patrick Corbin is very capable of doing it.
All right. I assume on the other side, again, this is Coors Field. You can take any number of these bats and justify them just because of the altitude and because of the offense of upside. It's, again, talking baseball savant and implied or X stats. DJ LeMahieu has great X stats against Patrick Corbin in near 50 plate appearances. Again, no sample size here is going to be big enough to make it predictive, but pretty crazy to see. Of all the hitters, including Story and Arenado, you have DJ LeMahieu with a 465 expected batting average, 894 expected slugging. Does have 4 career home runs, 16 hits, and 43 at bats against Patrick Corbin. So some expected stats there showing that over the course of their matchups, some high expectations for DJ LeMahieu in that matchup. Do you have a one-off you like best here? Is it Arenado simply because lefty righty at home, or is there just, hey, it's Coors, do what you will?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, the Colorado implied run total has dropped about a half of a run. It went from 5.1 to 4.7 throughout the day. That's notable to me. Actually, even Arizona's has come down from 5.1 to 4.9. Both of these guys are good pitchers. 92 degrees at Coors, though.
It's hot.
Yeah, it's hot. No humidity though, like 11% humidity. I like some of these Arizona bats, man. If John Gray, we don't know if he will, but if he continues to struggle like he has and not miss bats, which is not going to do you any favors at Coors. Peralta, just amazing numbers against righties this year. Profiles is a pretty good matchup anyway. Is in play. Escobar, plus just the full Diamondback stack is not out of the question. It's still 92 degrees at Coors. John Gray is struggling, and it makes sense. I can't justify playing Gray even with his price tag down right now. I have to take a wait and see approach here with only 18 days left in the season. But I do think that I have some interest in Patrick Corbin. And I guess on the other side, you could make the argument, sure, the Rockies at home, are hitting lefties better than anyone. Like they could just ravage any pitcher that goes out there. But we saw Kershaw go out there and produce decent numbers again. I believe he did. I don't think he was terrible. Corbin's a good enough pitcher to really limit the damage here. So I'm not really interested in paying a massive premium for any of these Rocky bats against a guy that has been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball this season.
All right, let's close it out with the last game, then get your top plays at each position. Felix Pena and Yabani Gallardo in this matchup in Anaheim for the Angels and the Texas Rangers. Gallardo, obviously a major retread for the Texas Rangers here. Has had some decent starts this year, but not really somebody that should be respected when it comes to pitching. So you have these LA bats like Shohei Ohtani, obviously, and Mike Trout, and whatever other way this lineup comes together. Then Pena on the other side against Texas. Texas has not been that great an offensive late. At 7,300, is Felix Pena somebody we should consider, or he's just not a high enough K upside guy to get into your lineup today?
Well, it's not that he's not a high enough K upside guy. It's that he's not a high enough K upside guy against lefties. Against righties, Pena's been dominant. He's holding them to a 268 weighted on base average this season with a 28% strikeout rate, less than 6% walks. Really, really excellent numbers against righties. But against lefties, his K rate drops almost 11 full percent to 17.2%. Not nearly as good against them. And whether the Rangers are good on the road or not, which, they aren't, they still have a lot of competent lefties that aren't going to strike out that much against Pena here, right? I mean, Shin-Soo Choo, Nomar Mazara, Joey Gallo is no stranger to striking out, but he also offers plenty of power, and Pena has not done a good job putting away lefties by way of strikeout. They have a lot of lefties. Rogner Udur is another one in this lineup that even Jurickson Profar that can create some problems. They'll probably have 6 lefties in the lineup today. I just think for Pena, heavier righty lineups are far more appealing than the lefties, or than lineups with as many lefties as we have for this Rangers team, or we're expecting to have. But on the other side, I love the Angels. I mean, you have to like the Angels against Yovani Gallardo. Just down the list, Ohtani, since they announced that he had to have Tommy John surgery.
Yep.
Since that, a week ago, 6 starts ago, he's got 3 home runs, 2 doubles, a triples, 10 RBIs, and 3 games with multiple hits. Like, it's not affecting his approach at the plate. He's got a 440 WOBA and a 353 ISO against righties this year. Mike Trout, how about Mike Trout? Gallardo's allowing 1.72 home runs per 9 to righties, and Mike Trout has a 413 WOBA and that's what Gallardo's allowing. A 451 WOBA, 313 ISO, and a 194 WRC plus. Cole Calhoun, since the start of, or over the last 2 months, 413 WOBA, 345 ISO, 44% fly balls, and a 61% hard hit rate. I'd even throw Justin Upton into the mix. This entire outfield is in a great spot against Yovani Gallardo. I really like them here, and I don't think it's any mistake that they have one of the highest implied run totals on the slate at 5.2.
Yep. If you believe in the ownership projections, which have been very good over at Awesemo.com, Ohtani will not be very owned on DraftKings. So maybe it's the price tag. Maybe it's just that he's not Mike Trout. But right now, current projection is pretty low for Ohtani. Obviously, you want to check that out over on Awesemo.com if you want to check out the ownership projections. Want to get out of the way so the Live Up to Lock show can come on. Spags and Jay Carey will be with you momentarily, but I do want to get Dave's quick rundown of positions to give you guys a too long, didn't listen recap of the show. At pitcher, Dave, we've talked a bit about multiple guys here. As we get to the end of the show, where do you think your ownership's going to go most of all?
A lot of different directions you can take here, but I'm going to have some Severino, some Nola. We'll have some David Price and Patrick Corbin. All of those guys up top, I'm going to mix in. The crazy, what are you doing type plays? Odorizzi would be one of them. Outside of that, I don't love a ton down at the bottom. So, there's not a lot down there to like. I don't know if I want to go Pena. I could see him being used just because there isn't a lot down there. But in tournaments, I'll sprinkle in a little Odorizzi and close my eyes, walk away from the computer, and come back and hope it's not a disaster.
Catcher.
Wilson Contreras. There's not anything here. It's a bad position. Play whoever fits. Wilson Contreras, maybe Salvador Perez, and Gary Sanchez is a good play against Odorizzi too. So I'd say Contreras and Sanchez.
Always hope Alex Avila somehow finds a power stroke in Coors Field against John Gray, but
he needs to make contact first.
Exactly right. That's where I was going next. Let's go to first base next. Tons of pop here as always. Matt Olson's the guy who I have in my shell lineup right now. Mitch Moreland was somebody else I was considering. Who do you have at first?
Yeah, Mitch Moreland, Matt Olson, and Jose Abreu.
All right, second base up next. You obviously have Jed Lowry in that same Oakland matchup, and then you can go from there. Who do you got?
Yeah, I think LeMahieu is a fine play here. He's not ultra expensive. I don't mind him. He's batting towards the top of the order. Should see plenty of opportunity. Jed Lowry. I like Whit Merrifield's stolen base upside a lot here too. And like I said, if you wanted to stack the bottom of that Boston order, Brock Holt's very cheap. It's risky, but we've seen the bottom of the Boston order do this before and kill everyone who played the guys at the top.
I love that call from you before, so I'll probably end up on at least 5 through 7, if not further down the line, which would let Sandy Leon be your catcher, obviously, in a not great position to be part of that stack. Third base, Chapman, obviously, somebody who talked about at great length before, and I loved your Chris Bryant call. What do you got at the hot corner?
Yeah, Bryant against a homer-prone righty. Rafael Devers batting 6th. Matt Chapman, Eduardo Escobar, Miguel Andujar. All of those guys, I think, are pretty solid options.
Escobar and Andujar. Shortstop.
Yeah, Escobar again. Tim Anderson against Skoglund. Xander Bogaerts against Aaron Sanchez. And I guess Mondesi's not bad just because he's got the stolen base upside. But outside of that, this is one of the weaker positions for sure.
You do have Brock Holt eligible here at shortstop as well on DraftKings to point that out. Outfield, obviously, tons of plays here. Shohei Ohtani, I think, tops my top end price play, especially if the ownership projection is correct. What do you got here at outfield?
All of the Angels outfielders, all of Oakland's outfielders, Peralta. Rhys Hoskins was the one Philly play I like because he really hits fastballs well, and Strasburg's fastball is not like good. I do like Rhys, but that's really just like a one-off off the board type of tournament option. But and obviously Yankee outfielders too, right? Like these guys are still in a good spot, whether it be McCutchen or Hicks or Stanton. But really like the Angels outfielders and Oakland outfielders. And of course, Betts, Benintendi, Martinez too, but you already knew that.
All right, that's going to do it. Dave will be back with you tomorrow on the Deeper Dive. And then you also have three fellas talking football tomorrow night, I do believe.
That's right. Very much looking forward to that.
That's at 8 p.m. Eastern time, right?
Yes, sir. No. 7 o'clock Eastern time. Yeah. Give you the information for the showdown, and then talk about all of week 2's action for Sunday.
There you have it. So check that out on YouTube and Periscope, of course, over at awesemo.com. Thanks so much for watching the Deeper Dive. Live Up to Lock is coming up next. You'll see Spags and you'll see Jay Carey momentarily. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you.